The 5 Golden Rules of Writing, a forensic guide for writers. Introduction: Writing as craft and calling. Writing, whether fiction or nonfiction, is an act of attention. It is the art of noticing, selecting, arranging, and shaping words into something that not only carries meaning, but creates an experience for the reader. While countless manuals, guides, and handbooks exist, most boil down to a handful of principles that make the difference between flat writing and living prose. These are not gimmicks or hacks. They are timeless anchors, trusted by great authors across centuries. This essay explores 5 golden rules of writing. 1. Memory. 2. Write about what you know. 3. Descriptive power. 4. Character. 5. Detail as the glue. Each of these principles is deceptively simple. Yet, when mastered, they equip the writer not merely to tell stories, but to craft works that endure. This guide does not treat them as slogans, but as forensic tools, instruments that enable a writer to dissect reality, reassemble it with imagination, and deliver it with precision. 1. Memory, the writer's archive. Memory is the deep reservoir every writer draws from. Unlike research, which supplies facts from outside, memory offers the lived impressions stored in the inner chamber of the mind. These impressions carry not only the bare bones of events, but their colors, smells, sounds, and above all, their emotional charge. The role of memory in writing. Great writing often begins when the writer turns inward. What is remembered becomes the seed for fiction, memoir, or even academic reflection. Marcel Proust demonstrated this power in Search of Lost Time, where the taste of a Madeleine dipped in tea awakened a flood of childhood recollections. The moment was not significant in the literal sense, but in memory it became a doorway to meaning. The writer's memory is not a flawless archive. It is selective, distorted, often inconsistent, but these distortions are assets. They give writing its subjectivity, its voice. Readers do not want surveillance footage of an event. They want the felt truth of an experience. Exercises for harnessing memory. 1. Memory sketching. Take an ordinary object, a key, a seashell, a photograph, and write down every memory it stirs. Do not worry about accuracy. Focus on sensation. 2. Emotional anchors. Recall a moment of strong emotion, fear, joy, grief. Write not about the event itself, but the smallest sensory details, the hum of a refrigerator during an argument, the texture of hospital sheets during a vigil. 3. Time layering. Write about the same event twice, once as your younger self experienced it, and once as your present self reflects upon it. The interplay of memories reveals character and perspective. Memory in practice. Toni Morrison once remarked that memory is not just data, but imagination itself. In novels like Beloved, memory becomes a haunting, the persistence of the past shaping the present. Writers who harness memory learn to let fragments of their own experience, or their culture's collective memory, bleed into their work. Thus, memory is not simply recall, it is transformation. Writers sift through remembered moments, keeping some raw, polishing others, and discarding the rest. In this selective act lies the first golden rule. 2. Write about what you know, knowledge as authenticity. The old adage, write what you know, has been misinterpreted to mean that writers must stay confined to their literal experiences. Taken that way, it would mean J.R.R. Tolkien could never invent Middle-earth, or Mary Shelley could not have created Frankenstein. Yet both did, and their works pulse with authenticity. What the rule truly means. Write what you know means grounding writing in authentic knowledge, the kinds of truths one has absorbed so deeply that they cannot be faked. This knowledge may be personal, family histories, landscapes, languages, or research to the point of intimacy. When Tolstoy wrote about battlefields in War and Peace, he relied on his experience as a soldier. When Ursula K. Le Guin wrote about alien cultures, she drew on her anthropological training and her keen eye for human societies. The heart of this rule is integrity. Readers sense when a writer is bluffing, when dialogue rings false, or when a setting feels like a stage backdrop. Conversely, even fantastical settings feel real if they rest on authentic observation, beyond personal experience. Consider George Orwell's Down and Out in Paris and London. Orwell lived among the working poor, washing dishes in Paris hotels and tramping through English roads. His writing was not mere reportage, but a fusion of lived experience and sharp social commentary. Similarly, Ernest Hemingway drew from his years as a war correspondent and traveler, embedding in his fiction the textures of real places and struggles. But a writer cannot experience everything firsthand. This is where deep research becomes a bridge. Hilary Mantel, in her Wolf Hall series, did not live in Tudor England. Yet her immersion in historical records gave her novels a startling immediacy. She wrote what she came to know not superficially, but with the authority of one who had lived alongside Thomas Cromwell in her imagination for decades. Practical applications. Observation journal. Carry a notebook. Write what you see, hear, and overhear, the cadence of a conversation, the smell of a bakery, the posture of a tired commuter. Immersion research. If writing about firefighters, spend time at a station. If writing about farmers, walk through fields. Experience builds authenticity. Emotional honesty. Even if the plot is invented, the emotions must be true. When you write grief, call upon your own grief. When you write joy, mine your own joy. To write about what you know is not to limit yourself, but to root your writing in truthful soil. Out of this soil, imagination may grow wild. 3. Descriptive power, making the invisible visible. Description is the writer's brushstroke. It is the act of turning abstract ideas or invisible feelings into images the reader can see, hear, taste, smell, or touch. Without description, writing is skeletal. With it, writing acquires flesh. The purpose of description. Good description is not a catalog of details. It is a deliberate act of selection. The writer chooses what to illuminate and what to leave in shadow. Dickens described London fog not for meteorological accuracy, but to reflect the moral murkiness of his society. In Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen does not describe every feature of Mr. Darcy's face. She selects key traits, his pride, his reserve, his eventual vulnerability, and lets the reader's imagination do the rest. Description is as much about restraint as inclusion. Vivid and economical. Consider this single line from Hemingway. The hills across the valley of the Ebro were long and white. Sparse words, yet the scene is vivid. Hemingway trusted the reader's imagination to fill the silence. Contrast this with Proust's lush, meandering sentences, where detail cascades endlessly. Both styles work, but each is deliberate, never random. Descriptive techniques. 1. Show, don't tell. Instead of saying she was nervous, describe how she fiddled with the edge of her sleeve, or how her breath caught mid-sentence. 2. Use all senses. Many writers rely too heavily on sight. Incorporate sound, smell, taste, and texture to deepen immersion. 3. Metaphor and simile. Comparison elevates description. Shakespeare's Juliet is the sun condenses a universe of feeling into 4 words. 4. Zoom in, zoom out. Alternate between wide angle, the sweep of a city skyline, and close-up, the chipped paint on a cafe chair. This keeps writing dynamic. The forensic balance. The forensic writer must ask, what does the reader need to see once, and what must be re-emphasized? A key detail may be introduced early, then echoed later, guiding the reader's memory. But over-description deadens impact. The golden mean is to describe powerfully once, then trust the reader to remember. 4. Character, the beating heart of story. Plot may drive events, but character drives meaning. Readers remember Elizabeth Bennet, Sherlock Holmes, Jay Gatsby, or Seethe from Beloved not because of the mechanics of plot alone, but because of their layered humanity. The nature of character. A character is not a list of traits. A character is a bundle of contradictions, desires, fears, and choices. Real people are not consistent. Neither should fictional people be. The most compelling characters surprise us, yet in retrospect we see that their choices were inevitable. Methods of characterization. 1. Dialogue. How a character speaks reveals as much as what they say. Consider the clipped wit of Austen's heroines or the brooding silences of Hemingway's men. 2. Action. Choices under pressure define character. Frodo's willingness to carry the ring, despite weakness, defines him more than any description. 3. Interior thought, stream of consciousness, as in Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, shows character through shifting, fragmented thought. 4. Contradictions, a miser who donates secretly, a soldier who fears violence, a cheerful person who despairs in private. Contradictions humanize characters. Characters and memory. A writer must remember what a character knows and when. Forgetting this leads to inconsistency. The forensic writer acts as archivist of character memory, ensuring that revelations align with what has already been shown. Flat versus round characters. E.M. Forster distinguished between flat characters, built on one idea, like caricatures, and round characters, capable of surprising us. Flat characters can be useful in satire or comedy, but enduring fiction requires roundness. Characters as mirrors. Characters often reflect aspects of the writer, even unconsciously. Dickens populated his novels with figures drawn from his observations. Dostoevsky filled his with embodiments of philosophical conflicts. Writers who deny themselves to their characters risk creating lifeless mannequins. 5. Detail as the glue, holding the narrative together. The final golden rule is perhaps the most forensic. Detail holds it all together. The writer is a curator of details, deciding what the reader must be told, what must be implied, and what must be left unsaid. The precision of detail. Jane Austen famously began Pride and Prejudice with the line, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." In one sentence, Austen anchors her world, wealth, marriage, and social expectation. She does not belabor the point. She states it once, letting it echo across the novel. The rule is this: a detail powerfully described needs only to appear once. Repetition dilutes. Trusting the reader to remember strengthens the bond between writer and reader. The forensic eye. The forensic writer must distinguish between critical details, those that shape theme, character, or plot, and atmospheric details, those that enrich texture. Both matter, but they function differently. Critical detail. The scar on Harry Potter's forehead. Mentioned sparingly, it anchors identity and destiny. Atmospheric detail. The smell of butterbeer, the shifting staircases at Hogwarts. These build immersion without driving the plot. Selective reminder. Sometimes, a reminder is necessary, but it must be subtle. Instead of repeating a description word for word, reintroduce the detail through another lens. For example, a character's blue scarf may first be described visually, later it may be remembered for its texture or scent. This keeps detail alive without redundancy. The discipline of restraint. Writers often overdescribe out of fear the reader will forget. But restraint is trust. To write once vividly is to believe the image will linger. The forensic writer knows when to let a detail rest, confident that the reader's memory will do its work. The forensic writer's craft. The 5 golden rules are not mechanical instructions, but disciplines of attention. Memory grounds writing in lived truth. Write about what you know anchors writing in authenticity. Descriptive power makes writing vivid and immersive. Character gives story its human core. Detail as glue ensures coherence and resonance. Together, they equip writers to become clinically forensic experts of narrative, deciding with precision what to reveal, what to emphasize, and what to leave to the reader's imagination. The true mark of a writer is not the ability to produce words in bulk, but the ability to choose the right words, grounded in memory and knowledge, sharpened with description, embodied in character, and unified by detail. Writers who master these golden rules do more than tell stories. They create worlds that endure in the reader's memory long after the final page is turned. Wordsmithing, the art of painting with words. Introduction. Writing is often thought of as simply putting words on a page. But to elevate writing from functional communication to art, one must engage in wordsmithing. Wordsmithing is the deliberate, thoughtful, and precise use of language to paint vivid images, evoke emotions, and shape ideas in the reader's mind. Just as a painter chooses colors, brushes, and textures to compose a visual masterpiece, a writer chooses words, rhythm, and imagery to create a mental canvas. The goal of wordsmithing is not verbosity, but clarity, resonance, and artistry. A skilled wordsmith makes language sing, crafting sentences that carry meaning, emotion, and subtlety simultaneously. Every word matters. Every sentence must earn its place. This essay explores the art of wordsmithing in depth, the principles, the methods, the pitfalls, and practical guidance for writers who want to transform ordinary writing into memorable literary craft. 1. Words as paint, the concept of imagery. At its core, wordsmithing is about imagery, the ability to make abstract concepts, emotions, and scenes perceptible to the reader's senses. A well-chosen word can conjure sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, turning the written page into an immersive experience. The role of imagery. Imagery allows readers to see the story. Without it, writing becomes flat and abstract. Consider. Flat. The forest was scary. Wordsmith. Moonlight pierced the tangled canopy, casting jagged shadows over roots that seemed to writhe like living snakes. In the second example, the forest becomes a living entity. The imagery conveys emotion, tension, and danger without explicitly stating it. Multisensory approach. To paint with words, engage all 5 senses. 1 sight, the obvious visual description, colors, shapes, movement. 2. Sound, the way environments, actions, or dialogue create auditory texture. 3. Smell, scents often trigger memory and emotion. 4. Touch, textures, temperature, pressure, and physical sensations. 5. Taste, especially effective in narrative involving food, medicine, or symbolic flavors. For example, the bakery smelled of yeast and brown sugar, its warmth brushing her cheeks, and the first bite of bread was rich with honey and salt. This sentence is multidimensional, activating the reader's senses and emotions simultaneously. 2. Precision in language. Choosing the right words. A master wordsmith treats each word like a brushstroke. Precision is key. The right word in the right place carries more weight than dozens of vague words. Verbs as action paint. Strong verbs convey movement, intention, and emotion. Weak. He went quickly down the street. Strong. He darted down the street, feet slapping wet cobblestones. The second version is dynamic, immediate, and concrete, letting the reader visualize the scene vividly. Nouns as anchors. Nouns provide the substance of imagery. Choosing the right noun can evoke specificity and meaning. Weak. A tree stood in the yard. Strong. An ancient oak towered over the garden, its gnarled branches twisting like arthritic fingers. Here, the tree becomes not just a backdrop, but a character with mood and presence. Adjectives and adverbs, the subtle tools. Adjectives and adverbs are often overused, but when carefully applied, they enhance rather than clutter. Weak. He walked slowly and nervously into the dark room. Strong. He crept into the dark room, each footfall echoing in the hollow silence. Notice how the strong version conveys slowness, hesitation, and environment without overloading adjectives. 3. Rhythm and flow. Musicality in prose. Wordsmithing is not only visual, it is auditory. Words have rhythm, cadence, and tone. Skilled writers understand how sentences can sing, pause, or hammer, affecting how the reader experiences the story. Sentence length and variation. Varying sentence length creates tension, emphasis, and flow. Short sentences create urgency or shock. He stopped. The gun clicked. Long sentences build atmosphere or introspection. Through the endless twilight, the river wound silently, reflecting the clouds that drifted lazily above, carrying the scent of distant rain. Mastering rhythm allows the reader to feel the prose as much as read it, heightening engagement. Sound devices. Writers use alliteration, assonance, consonants, and onomatopoeia to give prose musicality. Example: the sibilant hiss of the steam whispered secrets across the empty platform. Here, The repetition of S sounds mirrors the whispering, creating a sensory resonance. The pause and the beat. Strategic punctuation can control pacing, commas for breath, dashes for interruption, periods for finality. Effective wordsmiths think like composers, orchestrating prose rhythm as a musician arranges notes. 4. Show, don't tell. One of the most repeated writing mantras is show, don't tell. Wordsmithing makes this principle actionable. Rather than explaining emotion or situation, the writer demonstrates it through imagery, action, and dialogue. Examples: telling, she was scared. Showing, her hands trembled and the door handle slipped beneath her fingers. A cold shiver ran up her spine. The second sentence immerses the reader in her fear without stating it outright. Showing requires attention to physical, sensory, and psychological cues. It is the difference between describing a storm and making the reader feel the wind, hear the thunder, and taste the rain. Practical tip: whenever you catch yourself telling, ask, how can I let the reader experience this directly? Replace adjectives with actions, sensory cues, and dialogue. 5. Character through language. Characters are central to narrative. Wordsmithing brings them alive not just through plot, but through voice, action, and language choice. Voice as identity. A character's vocabulary, sentence structure, and tone reveal their personality. Formal: I cannot believe you would act so recklessly. Casual: you've got to be kidding me. Regional or cultural dialects also add authenticity and depth. Actions over labels. Rather than labeling a character, he was brave, show it through choice and action. Showing bravery, he stepped into the flames without hesitation, gripping the hose with white-knuckled determination. Subtext and dialogue. Wordsmithing uses dialogue to convey subtext. What a character says is often less important than how it is said. I'm fine, she said, eyes flicking to the cracked photograph on the wall. The reader perceives tension, emotion, and history beyond the literal words. 6. The art of detail, forensic precision. Details are the glue of wordsmithing. A well-chosen detail anchors setting, character, and plot, making a story believable. Introduce with purpose. Each detail must serve a function, atmosphere, characterization, or thematic resonance. For example, critical: the scar on a hero's face, recurring at key moments. Atmospheric: the faint smell of coffee in a detective's office. The one-time principle: powerful details often require only a single mention. Jane Austen's opening line in Pride and Prejudice does exactly this, setting wealth, social expectation, and gender politics in one sentence without repetition. Consistency. Forensic attention to detail avoids contradictions that break immersion. Eye color, scars, habits, locations all must remain consistent. Avoid adding traits arbitrarily later. This confuses the reader. Exercises. 1. Create a detail sheet for each character: physical traits, habits, emotional quirks. 2. Track setting details in a log to maintain consistency across chapters. 3. Use one symbolic object in multiple ways to reinforce theme and emotion. 7. Editing, the wordsmith's refinement. Wordsmithing is never complete in the first draft. Writing must be polished, refined, and sculpted. Cut the unnecessary. Every word should earn its place. Extra adverbs, filler adjectives, or redundant phrases weaken the art. Weak: he ran very quickly across the street. Strong: he sprinted across the street. Strengthen imagery. Replace vague descriptions with precise, evocative imagery. Consider color, texture, and motion. Read aloud. Hearing your words highlights awkward rhythm, repetition, or clunky phrasing. Wordsmithing is both visual and auditory. Peer feedback. A fresh perspective can reveal ambiguity, unclear imagery, or unintended tone. Wordsmithing benefits from both solitude and collaborative review. 8. The ethics of wordsmithing. Wordsmithing is also an ethical craft. Words carry power, emotion, and influence. Writers must balance artistry with honesty, respect, and responsibility. Avoid misrepresentation or stereotypes. Respect the lived experiences behind inspiration. Craft emotion authentically rather than manipulating for cheap effect. Ethical wordsmithing strengthens reader trust and narrative impact. 9. Exercises to become a wordsmith. 1. Daily word painting. Describe one object or moment in a paragraph using all 5 senses. 2. Cut and refine. Take a paragraph and reduce it by 25% without losing meaning. 3. Voice practice. Rewrite a scene from 3 characters' perspectives, adjusting language and tone. 4. Symbol hunt. Identify one recurring object or image and weave it consistently into a scene. 5. Dialogue with subtext. Write a conversation where the words say one thing, but the character's actions or emotions suggest another. These exercises train attention, precision, and creativity, the core tools of a wordsmith. 10. Examples from literature. Hemingway. Minimalist, precise verbs and dialogue convey powerful emotion. Toni Morrison. Memory and sensory detail intertwine to evoke history and identity. Conan Doyle. Forensic precision in character habits and investigative detail ground stories. Jane Austen. Sharp social observation conveyed in a single line or sentence. Studying masters shows how different styles can all achieve vivid, unforgettable writing. Wordsmithing is a skill adaptable across genres. Wordsmithing is the art of painting with words, combining imagery, rhythm, precision, and emotional truth. It requires attention to memory and experience, grounding in what the writer knows, sensory description that evokes the reader's imagination, characterization that conveys depth, contradiction, and humanity, detail and consistency that anchor the narrative, editing that refines and polishes every sentence. A skilled wordsmith does not merely tell a story, they create worlds that live, breathe, and linger in the reader's mind. Each word is a deliberate brushstroke, each sentence a composition. Mastery comes from attention, practice, and the courage to see and feel the world deeply, and then to translate that experience into unforgettable language. Wordsmithing on the Sunshine Coast, the Golden Girls as masters of language. Introduction. When we think of television comedy, we often think of timing, visual gags, or slapstick humor. But The Golden Girls, which first aired in 1985 and ran through 1992, transcends the boundaries of traditional sitcoms. At its core, the show is a study in wordsmithing, demonstrating how dialogue, characterization, and verbal interplay can create comedy, tension, and emotional depth simultaneously. Each of the 4 main characters, Dorothy, Blanche, Rose, and Sophia, is not only vividly drawn but also linguistically distinct, possessing a voice that is instantly recognizable. Their mastery of language demonstrates the principles of wordsmithing in practice: precision, timing, character-driven description, and memorable imagery. This chapter examines the art of verbal craft in the Golden Girls, showing how their dialogue exemplifies lessons any writer or storyteller can learn. Through humor, wit, and sharp observation, the series teaches the audience not only to laugh, but also to appreciate how words themselves can become the canvas of storytelling. 1. Distinctive character voices. The first rule of wordsmithing is to give each character a unique voice. The Golden Girls excels in this regard, using language as a primary tool of characterization. Each character communicates differently, reflecting her personality, experiences, and social worldview. Dorothy's Bornak, the sharp realist. Dorothy's voice is dry, witty, and often sarcastic. Her verbal style conveys intelligence, skepticism, and emotional control. Unlike slapstick humor, Dorothy's comedy often comes from precisely chosen words and timing, not physical action. Example: when Rose expresses naive enthusiasm, Dorothy's retort is cutting yet concise. Rose: I met a man at the store who says he's been married 3 times. Dorothy: well, maybe he's just doing quality control on his soul. Here, Dorothy's sarcasm is economical but vivid. She paints a scene and conveys judgment in one line, demonstrating how wordsmithing can create immediate character and tone. Dorothy's language teaches writers to use sharp, economical phrasing to define a character instantly. Her words are like scalpel cuts, precise, memorable, and highly effective. Blanche Devereaux, The Southern Belle. Blanche's dialogue contrasts Dorothy's precision with lush, often playful descriptions. She uses metaphor, hyperbole, and seductive wordplay to convey charm, vanity, and self-awareness. Her dialogue often demonstrates rhythm and musicality, another principle of wordsmithing. Example, when recounting a romantic encounter, Blanche might say, "Honey, he kissed me like a man who'd just won the lottery, and I was the grand prize." Blanche's use of simile and exaggeration paints a vivid, humorous picture, immediately conjuring imagery in the viewer's mind. Writers can learn from this that humor and vivid description often go hand in hand. Rose Nyland, the naive storyteller. Rose's charm lies in her innocence, her tendency to tell stories that are oddly detailed and slightly irrelevant. Her language is often literal, sometimes awkward, but always precise in detail, reflecting her background from St. Olaf, Minnesota. Example, in St. Olaf, we had a festival where everyone dressed as a different kind of potato. Once I was a sweet potato, and I got chased by the rutabagas. Rose's word choices are not merely funny, they create a mental picture that is both absurd and endearing. Her speech demonstrates that unique character perspective is a tool for wordsmithing, turning personality into vivid narrative. Sophia Petrillo, the forensic historian. Sophia, Dorothy's mother, is a master of timing, brevity, and storytelling. She uses one-line punchlines loaded with history and emotion. Her dialogue is often sharp, almost forensic in its observation. Example, picture it, Sicily, 1922. I was 12 and already smarter than most men I met. Sophia's opening immediately establishes backstory, voice, and wit in one line. Writers can observe that wordsmithing isn't just about embellishment, it's about economy, delivering maximum impact with minimal words. 2. Dialogue as a painting. The Golden Girls illustrates how conversation can serve as a canvas. Dialogue is not merely information delivery, it is an art form. Every exchange between characters paints scenes, conveys personality, and advances narrative. Layered humor. Much of the humor is multi-layered, combining timing, irony, and wordplay. Consider an exchange. Dorothy. Blanche, your dates are starting to sound like a police lineup. Blanche. Darling, I consider every man a potential masterpiece. Rose. At St. Olaf, a lineup usually meant someone stole a cow. This short exchange establishes 1. Dorothy's cynicism.
2. Blanche's vanity.
3. Rose's naivety and rural perspective. In a few sentences, the show paints 3 vivid characters and contrasts their voices. Writers can learn that every line of dialogue should do more than just carry information. It should contribute to character, setting, or theme. The rhythm of comedy. Wordsmithing involves auditory awareness. The Golden Girls often uses pauses, repetitions, and interruptions to create comedic rhythm. Dorothy. I'm going out tonight. Blanche. Alone? Dorothy. With my dignity. Here, the pause before the punchline emphasizes Dorothy's wit. Wordsmithing teaches that timing in written dialogue is as critical as timing in spoken performance. Short sentences, abrupt interruptions, and contrast all contribute to rhythm. 3. Description without excess. Although primarily dialogue-driven, the show often relies on verbal description to set scenes. Blanche and Rose, in particular, use descriptive language to convey setting, mood, and emotion, much like a painter layering brushstrokes.
Blanche descriving a date.
He had eyes like summer skies and hands that could carve a statue from marble. Rose describing Street Olaf. The cows wore little knitted hats in the winter to keep their ears warm. These lines demonstrate how even comedic descriptions can be precise and evocative. Writers can learn that details, no matter how whimsical, should create imagery that is clear, memorable, and relevant to character or scene. 4. Memory and storytelling. Sophia's storytelling highlights another aspect of wordsmithing, the use of memory to enrich narrative. Her tales of Sicily are concise, often ending in punchlines or moral lessons, showing that experience and recollection can be condensed into vivid prose. Example: When I was young, we didn't have fancy cafes. We had one breadstick and a lot of arguments over who got it. This line uses personal memory to establish humor, social commentary, and nostalgia simultaneously. Writers can emulate this by 1. Drawing from personal or imagined memory. 2. Compressing details to focus on the emotional or visual impact. 3. Using memory to give voice depth and authenticity. 5. The power of forensic detail. Much like Sophia's historical recollections, the Golden Girls is meticulous about details. Details are not wallpaper. They are forensic markers that define character, continuity, and tone. Costume and physical detail. While not purely verbal, dialogue often references physical details that reinforce characterization. Blanche's obsession with her appearance, shoes, or dresses is referenced constantly. I simply cannot go out in these shoes. They will ruin the entire evening. Dorothy's glasses, work ethic, and demeanor are referenced to highlight contrast with Blanche's flamboyance. Wordsmithing in recurring gags. Details are also used in running jokes and verbal motifs, reinforcing both comedy and continuity. Sophia's frequent picture-it introductions. Rose's street Olaf anecdotes. Dorothy's sarcastic retorts to Blanche's vanity. These repeated elements are surgical, consistent, and memorable, demonstrating the importance of precision and one-time impactful detail in wordsmithing. 6. Wordplay and puns. The Golden Girls demonstrates linguistic playfulness, which is a hallmark of skilled wordsmithing. Their humor often relies on double meanings, words that have both literal and figurative significance. Puns, clever twists on common phrases. Irony, contrasts between what is said and what is meant.
Example.
Blanche, I never say no to a man except when I mean it. Here, the pun is subtle, the irony is immediate, and the line captures Blanche's character in a single sentence. Writers can emulate this technique by infusing dialogue with wit that is both character-specific and contextually rich. 7. Emotional resonance through dialogue. Beyond humor, the Golden Girls demonstrates emotional wordsmithing. Characters navigate grief, love, aging, and friendship with language that is simultaneously light and profound. Example, in discussing loss, Dorothy might say, "We can't choose what life gives us, but we can choose how we sit through it." A single sentence conveys resilience, wisdom, and empathy. Writers can learn that concise, emotionally honest lines often resonate more than elaborate exposition. 8. Practical lessons for writers. From the Golden Girls, writers can extract several wordsmithing principles. 1. Distinctive voice. Give each character unique diction, rhythm, and vocabulary. 2. Dialogue as canvas. Every line should convey character, advance story, or evoke imagery. 3. Precision and timing. Use brevity, pauses, and word choice to create humor, tension, or rhythm. 4. Memory and detail. Draw from lived or imagined experience. Use forensic details for consistency. 5. Playfulness and wit. Integrate puns, irony, and clever phrasing to engage and surprise the reader. 6. Emotional honesty. Even in comedy, truth in language builds connection and resonance. 9. Exercises inspired by the Golden Girls. 1. Character voice drill. Write 4 paragraphs, each from a different character's perspective. Focus on vocabulary, tone, and rhythm. 2. Dialogue painting. Take a scene and convey setting and emotion through dialogue alone. 3. Memory compression. Recall a personal event and describe it in 2 sentences that capture humor or emotion. 4. Forensic detail. Create a character sheet and include recurring traits or verbal motifs. 5. Play with puns and irony. Rewrite ordinary dialogue to include wordplay consistent with character. 10. In the end, The Golden Girls is a masterclass in wordsmithing. Its enduring appeal is not just humor, but how language constructs character, conveys emotion, and paints vivid scenes. Dorothy's sharp wit, Blanche's lush metaphor, Rose's detailed absurdity, and Sophia's concise storytelling demonstrate all the principles of effective wordsmithing: distinctive voice, precise imagery, timing, forensic detail, and emotional resonance. For writers, the show is more than entertainment. It is a practical lesson in the art of painting with words. By studying dialogue, rhythm, and characterization, writers can learn to craft language that sings, informs, and endures, just as the Golden Girls has for decades. William Shakespeare, master wordsmith forging great images across centuries and writing styles. Introduction: The enduring power of a wordsmith. William Shakespeare, 1564 to 1616, often celebrated as the Bard of Avon, stands as the undisputed master of English wordsmithing. Across his 38 plays, 154 sonnets, and multiple long narrative poems, Shakespeare crafted a universe of language so precise, inventive, and emotionally resonant that his works remain not only readable but profoundly relevant over 4 centuries later. To call him merely a writer diminishes the scope of his artistry. Shakespeare was a craftsman of thought, a sculptor of metaphor, a painter of imagery, and a musician of rhythm, shaping words into tools capable of conveying the full spectrum of human experience. His genius lay in the ability to fuse precision with imagination, creating characters, settings, and emotions that continue to resonate because they are deeply human. He spoke to the universal love, jealousy, ambition, grief, while his words were crafted in forms of dazzling specificity. Expressions such as "all that glitters is not gold," "break the ice," or "wild goose chase" are now embedded in the English language, yet they originated in Shakespeare's imaginative genius. This linguistic inventiveness demonstrates a key principle of wordsmithing. Language, when wielded skillfully, has the power to shape not just literature but thought itself. Shakespeare's work also illustrates the durability of masterful wordsmithing. Though English has changed over centuries, his metaphors, rhythms, and linguistic innovations remain striking and intelligible. Audiences continue to respond to his words with immediacy because Shakespeare understood the human mind. He knew how to craft phrases that linger, images that endure, and rhythms that echo in memory. In exploring Shakespeare as a master wordsmith, this essay will examine his imagery, innovation, rhythm, characterization, genre versatility, and enduring influence, providing insight into why his words remain a benchmark of literary excellence. The language of imagery, painting pictures with words. Shakespeare's genius as a wordsmith is perhaps most evident in his use of imagery, the ability to paint vivid mental pictures that convey not just appearances but emotion, atmosphere, and meaning. Long before photography or cinema, words were the sole medium for representing the world on stage, and Shakespeare wielded them with unmatched precision. Consider Macbeth's famous hallucination. "Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still." Here, Shakespeare does not merely describe a dagger. He creates an image that is simultaneously tangible, psychological, and symbolic. The dagger becomes a visual manifestation of Macbeth's conscience, a harbinger of his murderous ambition. The audience sees the dagger in the mind's eye while also feeling Macbeth's internal conflict. In Romeo and Juliet, imagery elevates emotion to the cosmic level. It is the East, and Juliet is the sun. A single line transforms Juliet from a mere character into a luminous, almost divine presence. Shakespeare's wordsmithing fuses natural imagery with emotional depth, allowing the reader or audience to experience not just the scene, but the intensity of perception and feeling. Shakespeare also demonstrates mastery in combining visual, auditory, tactile, and olfactory imagery. In Othello, Desdemona's handkerchief is described with such care that it functions both as a plot device and a symbol of fidelity. A simple piece of cloth becomes central to the narrative, emotionally charged and visually unforgettable. Similarly, in The Tempest, the description of storms, tempests, and magical phenomena invokes sight, sound, and movement, immersing the audience in the scene without elaborate stage machinery. This richness of imagery is not mere decoration. Each metaphor, simile, and visual cue is carefully engineered for maximum impact. Shakespeare's wordsmithing demonstrates that imagery in literature is not an optional embellishment, but a fundamental tool for conveying meaning, emotion, and character. Inventing words and shaping language. Shakespeare's mastery extended beyond imagery to inventing new words and phrases. Scholars estimate that he coined over 1,700 English words, many of which are now standard. Examples include inventing words and shaping language. Examples include assassination from Macbeth, lonely from Coriolanus, bedazzled from The Taming of the Shrew, majestic from Julius Caesar, and swagger from A Midsummer Night's Dream. These words feel so ordinary to modern readers that we often forget they were once novel, playful, or startling to the Elizabethan ear. Shakespeare was not afraid to twist existing words into new forms, combine roots in unexpected ways, or coin wholly original terms when the English language lacked the right instrument for his meaning. This inventiveness reflects his role as a linguistic wordsmith. Just as a blacksmith forges new tools out of raw iron, Shakespeare forged new expressions out of the raw matter of sound and sense. His mastery did not lie merely in ornamentation but in utility. The words he coined filled a need, capturing shades of feeling, movement, and personality that had not been fully expressed before. In this way, he did not only paint pictures with words, he expanded the very palette with which future generations could paint. Beyond individual words, Shakespeare also reshaped phrases into memorable idioms that remain common centuries later. Everyday sayings such as "a wild goose chase," "break the ice," "heart of gold," and "wear my heart upon my sleeve," all spring from his works. These are not empty turns of phrase, but living metaphors that capture human experience with sharp clarity. They show how deeply Shakespeare understood both the music of language and the psychology of his audience. His wordsmithing power was not only in writing, but in speaking directly to the rhythms of ordinary life. Rhythm and musicality. If words are the raw material of the writer, rhythm is the forge fire that shapes them into something enduring. Shakespeare's language pulses with musicality, whether in the heartbeat rhythm of iambic pentameter or in the varied cadences of prose. His training as both poet and dramatist gave him a dual sensitivity. Words needed to be read with the eye and spoken with the tongue. This duality makes his lines memorable and performative, not just literary artifacts on a page. Consider the opening line of Richard III. "Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York." The rhythm turns a political claim into a melodic proclamation, giving Richard's words both grandeur and irony. Likewise, in Hamlet, the famous soliloquy begins not with lofty rhetoric, but with a plain yet perfectly measured phrase. To be or not to be, that is the question. The symmetry of its rhythm, the balance of its clauses, and the simplicity of its diction elevate a universal dilemma into timeless poetry. The line lingers not because it is complex, but because it is crafted with rhythmic precision. Shakespeare often used rhythm to mirror emotion. Broken lines, heavy pauses, or irregular beats could indicate anxiety, hesitation, or passion. For instance, Macbeth's fractured speech after Duncan's murder, "Will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood/clean from my hand?" conveys both guilt and frenzy in its breathless cadence. Rhythm here becomes a psychological tool. The music of the line reveals the disorder of the character's mind. Thus, Shakespeare, as a wordsmith, did not merely decorate with pretty phrases. He understood that words have weight and resonance, and that the ear is as important as the eye in shaping meaning. His language sings because it was designed for the stage, for performance, echo, and memory. Characterization through words. Another facet of Shakespeare's mastery lies in how he gave each character a distinctive verbal fingerprint. Unlike some of his contemporaries, who allowed characters to speak in similar tones, Shakespeare tailored speech to personality, status, and mood. Falstaff, the roguish knight of Henry IV, uses boisterous, sprawling language filled with wit, exaggeration, and earthy humor. His words swagger as much as his body. In contrast, Juliet in Romeo and Juliet speaks with lyrical innocence, her metaphors blooming like flowers. My bounty is as boundless as the sea, slash my love as deep. The measured dignity of Prospero, the philosophical introspection of Hamlet, the fiery rhetoric of Antony, each voice is unique. Shakespeare's gift as a wordsmith was not only his vocabulary but his ability to inhabit minds so different from one another. His villains seduce us with eloquence, his fools disarm us with playful riddles, and his kings persuade us with lofty rhetoric. Each word is a tool of characterization, a mirror of inner life. Moreover, his characters often forge their own words in moments of intensity. Othello, consumed by jealousy, invents phrases that seem to struggle against his own spiraling passions. Lear, raging on the heath, bends language into raw fragments that embody madness itself. Here we see Shakespeare's deepest artistry. He allowed language to bend under the weight of human emotion, shaping words until they revealed the soul.
Genre versatility.
A true wordsmith must be versatile, able to adapt tools for many purposes. Shakespeare demonstrated this across an astonishing range of genres: comedy, tragedy, history, romance, and even tragicomedy. In the comedies, his words sparkle with wit and repartee. Much Ado About Nothing thrives on verbal duels between Beatrice and Benedick, where love hides beneath layers of sarcasm and quick-tongue deflection. Language itself becomes a game, a fencing match where every thrust and parry delights the audience. In the tragedies, words deepen into darker registers. Macbeth drips with imagery of blood, night, and unnatural forces. Othello seethes with suspicion and poison metaphors. Here the wordsmith uses language as a dagger, cutting into the heart of human weakness. In the histories, his language balances grandeur and politics. Speeches like Henry V, Once More Unto the Breach, or St. Crispin's Day elevate national identity and leadership, stirring audiences with their martial rhythm. These works remind us that Shakespeare was as much a chronicler of his nation's destiny as a dramatist. Finally, in the romances, The Tempest, Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, his words take on a dreamlike, almost magical quality. The language softens into poetry of reconciliation, wonder, and renewal. This ability to shift tonal registers while maintaining linguistic brilliance shows why Shakespeare remains unparalleled. He mastered every corner of the literary forge. Legacy across centuries. The enduring power of Shakespeare's words lies not only in their beauty, but in their adaptability across time and culture. His plays have been translated into every major language, performed on every continent, and adapted into countless forms, from opera to film to hip-hop. Each generation rediscovers him, finding in his language fresh tools to articulate their own hopes and struggles. The universality of his words comes from their human core. Love, jealousy, ambition, despair, joy, and forgiveness are not confined to Elizabethan England. His ability to phrase them memorably ensures that his works transcend boundaries. When Nelson Mandela quoted Julius Caesar from his prison cell, when Martin Luther King Jr. drew upon the cadences of Hamlet, or when modern directors reimagine Romeo and Juliet in urban settings, we see Shakespeare's living wordsmithery at work. Shakespeare's legacy also lies in the English language itself. Many of the words and idioms he coined have become so woven into speech that we seldom recognize their origin. He gave English not only vocabulary but flexibility, a willingness to innovate and expand. In this sense, every writer who plays with language today owes him a debt. Shakespeare, the master wordsmith. To call William Shakespeare a wordsmith is to recognize more than his poetic skill. It is to acknowledge his role as a forger of expression, a craftsman who shaped raw sound into enduring meaning. He expanded the dictionary, heightened the rhythm of speech, gave unique voices to characters, shifted easily among genres, and left behind a linguistic treasure chest still in daily use. His wordsmithing was not confined to the Elizabethan stage. It has traveled across centuries, cultures, and styles, shaping literature, theater, and even everyday conversation. He stands as a reminder that words are not merely tools but living instruments, capable of building worlds, capturing souls, and resonating across time. Shakespeare remains the exemplar of what it means to paint with words. His images still glow, his rhythms still sing, and his phrases still guide the human imagination. In the hands of this master craftsman, language itself was transformed into art, not for one age, but for all.